What's up, psychedelic investors? My name's James, and you're watching The Psychedelic Investor, your number one news source for psychedelic stocks. Today, we have an absolutely fantastic episode for you, and that is because the one and only CEO of Numinus Wellness is with us on the channel today, Payton Nyquvest. So if you guys like Numinus, if you guys are invested in the company, or if anything that is said in this conversation changes your mind, let me know why down in the comment section. So without further ado, let's bring on the man of the hour, Mr. Payton Nyquvest himself. How are you doing today, Payton?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing good. I guess first off, my very first question is, am I pronouncing your name right? I've been saying this for like a few weeks now, Payton Nyquvest, but I just want to make sure I'm saying it right.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. It's Nyquist, actually. No, the
Nyquist, I'm
V is
so
a silent
sorry.
one. No, all
For
good, all good.
all my viewers watching, I've been saying it wrong for like 2 weeks now. I apologize.
I appreciate it.
Alrighty, Payton. So I guess my very first question for you, and it's the same question I ask all the guests on this channel, is what is the mission of Numinus?
Sure. Really the mission for Numinus is to provide safe, evidence-based psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy to allow people to heal and be well. Really, our focus is twofold. One is Numinus Health, which is our service offering platform, really based in evidence and research to be able to provide accessible use of psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. And then Numinus Bioscience, which is our Health Canada licensed lab and production facility that I'm sure we can get in more to later.
Perfect. I guess just quick follow-up question. So are these two parts of the company, they're like divided by a wall, like these people work in this area, these people work in this area, or that's more of a kind of legalistic division that you guys have, and in reality, it's like everybody's in the same office type thing?
Great question. Where the lab is built, obviously geographically, there's people in different locations, but very much two parts that speak to the whole. I would say, and obviously with psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, there's two distinct parts. There's the psychotherapy, and then there's the application of psychedelics as well.
Perfect, perfect. So I guess let's hop right into the good stuff. So Numinus has so many different projects going on, which is one of the reasons that you guys are actually one of my favorite psychedelic medicines companies. I don't know if you saw it, but we actually did a top 5 video and you guys finished, I think, number 3, but definitely in the top 5. So
Cool.
I've absolutely loved your guys and the work you're doing. So let's hop
Thank you.
right into the different programs that you're working on. So I guess first off, let's touch on the compassionate access trial that you guys are doing with MAPS, treating PTSD with MDMA. What can you tell me about
Mhm.
this program a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, most listeners, I would assume, probably know who MAPS is, but for anybody who doesn't, MAPS is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, and really the reason why psychedelics are where they are today. Rick Doblin and his team have been, you know, dedicated and advancing this field forward for about 35 years, and really highlighted most recently by the results from their phase 3 trials, which were staggering in the regards to treating PTSD. So our collaboration with them is really to help advance that work forward. And the investment in research is twofold. One, obviously to continue to move the data set forward to get to a regulated state, but also for us to be able to initiate these trials in-house and start to develop and build the infrastructure needed to hold MDMA assisted psychotherapy, which is a very different infrastructure requirement than, say, ketamine would be.
Mhm.
And so it's an opportunity for us to do that. And then, finally, and probably most importantly, is the training of practitioners. That really, that's going to be the gateway to be doing this work. And so for us to be able to, through the work we're doing with MAPS, be able to train and get a workforce ready for when MDMA is legally available.
So does your compassionate access trial that you're doing, does it differ in any major way from the phase 3 trial that MAPS did with PTSD and MDMA, or it's basically the same type of procedure, same type of regime?
Yeah, so very much the same. A few things that we've looked at doing a little bit differently is just how potentially we could make some adjustments to make it more cost effective for people. And that's some of the work that we've been doing is, think of this as sort of like the phase 3/2 of the work that MAPS has been doing. And so it's really continuing to move towards getting it available for the market.
Perfect. And has the dosing already started, or you're still in the stage where you're looking for participants?
We will be initiating dosing of patients. The plan, obviously, subject to a little bit of regulation, but the plan would be for the end of summer, and it should actually roll through and complete quite quickly. Finding applicants is very much the easy part. It's really just jumping through the regulatory hoops. But Health Canada has been very, very supportive, so we don't expect that taking very long.
So I guess first off, congratulations. That's super exciting. The fact that
Thank you.
this trial is going to be starting in a couple months, basically. So that's a huge, I would have to think, an inflection point, a turning point for the company on a whole.
Yeah, I would say absolutely.
Perfect. Quick question. Maybe you can help me understand why necessarily going the compassionate access route as opposed to the clinical trial route. Like, how are they different, and why would one choose one over the other?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We think about compassionate access as we call it implementation science. So, it's an investment that is a lot less capital intensive than a full blown FDA clinical trial is. And if you look at MDMA, MAPS is doing a lot of the financial heavy lifting to get MDMA, into the mainstream. So there's not really the need for an entire additional full-blown clinical trial. Our focus has been more collaborating with groups that are sort of leading the way and doing the financial heavy lifting. And then for us to be able to support that, create necessary chinks in the chain to be able to do it once it's in a regulated environment, and then obviously looking at increasing the indication set. So for us, the compassionate access work is to continue to build out the data, especially in Canada, but obviously all the work that we're doing in Canada is translational in the US as well. And then that gives us the ability to start working with these materials now, start developing the workforce, start building the infrastructure, so that when things do turn to a legal standpoint, we're ready to go and not trying to figure it out after.
So glancing ahead, let's say a year or so in the future, once this compassionate access trial wraps up, what would be the next steps in terms of using MDMA to treat PTSD?
That's a good question. So if you look at, essentially what will happen is MAPS will take MDMA through FDA phase 3 clinical trials. They've now developed their B Corp, and really MAPS, the two focus that MAPS will have will be the training of practitioners and the distribution of MDMA. And there's some unique opportunities that we're exploring, obviously, around distribution with our licensing and bioscience. But for us to be able to then post, the compassionate access work, the results that obviously we're anticipating similar results to what MAPS saw in their phase 1 or the phase 3 trial that they just did. So that's data that we can then go to regulators with, we can go to colleges with. It's information that the different medical professionals who are looking to do prescribing of MDMA to their clients, it gives a lot of robustness to what we're continuing to do. And then also, as I mentioned, the training of practitioners, and as well, potentially Numinus being able to help with the distribution of the actual MDMA drug itself.
That sounds all fantastic. One last quick follow-up question before moving on. Let's touch on that MAPS trial for those that maybe didn't see our couple episodes on it. Just how effective was it in treating PTSD, MDMA, I mean?
Yeah, so they saw an 80% reduction in, and I think what's really important to note is in the literature it's post-traumatic stress disorder. But if you really read through the trial, these are treatment-resistant post-traumatic stress disorder cases. So these are people who have gone through all the other ways of treating PTSD and have failed, and then have turned to this. So it's really astounding. And out of that 80%, 66% of those people actually no longer met the PTSD criteria. So essentially cured, which, when we talk about mental, it's a huge word. And I think it's an important one to actually, have people throw around. It's a big mindset shift for people in regards to psychedelics. These are potential cures for mental health treatments or mental health indications that, a lot of us have felt like we need to take an SSRI for the rest of our lives. We're talking about curative intent.
That's pretty amazing, and I wish you guys all the best. I mean, the literature so far seems to be on your side, so fingers crossed that it keeps the same. Shifting gears a little bit, I want to touch on your other compassionate access trial that you're set to launch soon, which
Hmm.
is treating addiction with psilocybin. So what can you tell us about
Hmm.
that program?
Yeah, so there's a couple programs that we'll be running in regards to addiction. One is for opiate use disorder, and then stimulant and alcohol. And really, there's been no shortage of research that's started to kick off in regards to psilocybin. You look at the depression work. It feels like there's some new psilocybin trial that's popping up every couple of weeks now. And so our focus, obviously, and really highlighted out of Vancouver, where we're based, is addiction is continuing to be a worse and worse problem. And so for us to be able to to start to kick off more research in regards to how psilocybin could potentially help with some of those indications. Again, similar to the MAPS compassionate access work, it also helps us train our workforce. It helps to get educated on some other indications, recognizing that psilocybin, will be taken through. Compass is probably the closest to taking psilocybin into a regulated framework, but that there's going to be a whole bunch of work after that in regards to other indications, setting up the infrastructure, all of that, without the price tag of, a full-blown clinical trial, which is, brand new clinical trials are north of $100 million, and 10 years usually in regards to how long that can potentially take. The other interesting thing with psilocybin that we're starting to see in Canada is there's a conversation around whether psilocybin will actually be considered a pharmaceutical, or whether it potentially maybe goes a different route, like more of a natural health product, not in regards to something that would be over the counter. But you're seeing, obviously, and in the US as well, you're seeing states like Oregon, you're seeing the right to try things down in California. Um, there, there's a lot of question marks around psilocybin right now and what the potential legal framework might be. So we're making sure that regardless of which way it goes, Numinus is very much at the forefront of being able to provide accessibility for people.
So going on to a little bit of a tangent here, but it's just a thought I had. So you guys are in BC, and I know that there's discussion there, at least in Vancouver, if not the entire province, of maybe decriminalizing some of these substances. Would that have
Mhm.
any material effect on businesses working with them, or it would just help people so they wouldn't get locked up for using it?
I think the decriminalization movement is an important one. I think with psychedelics, especially, that there's just I love what Oregon is doing, where they're decriminalizing it, but they're implementing therapeutic guidelines, training of therapists. There's some structure around it, and I think that's important for psychedelics. And so far, we're in this really exciting time of there's really exciting clinical data that's coming out, while there's this massive increase in public advocacy and support for psychedelics as well. So I think in regards to BC, obviously, it greatly improves and speeds up a lot of the timelines for work that we're doing in BC. But Numinus's focus has always been not only across the country, but down into the US and internationally as well.
Perfect. So we got MDMA for PTSD, we got psilocybin for addiction, several different indications of addiction, but that's not all you guys are doing. You're also working in clinics with ketamine-assisted therapy. So
Mhm.
I guess my first question on this would be walk us through the process of how somebody with depression would actually end up being treated at one of your clinics. So do you have to get a doctor's note saying you have depression? Do you have to have been attempted to be treated before multiple different times? Or how does that work exactly?
Yeah, so you just need a referral from a GP or doctor, and then we can intake you. We have an intake and screening process that we go through at our locations as well, and then we have a three dosing protocol, as well as integration on either side of that, and that's at the highest level view, sort of what that looks like for people. We're very intensive and thorough in regards to the therapeutic program around it. This is not IV ketamine. You're working with a therapist, and the therapist is guiding you through that process, which we believe is really important.
Okay, so when you're actually under the influence of ketamine and you're lying there on the couch, are you still able to have a conversation with your therapist, or you're completely gone and they're just waiting for you to come back to life, essentially?
Yeah, that's a good question. The exciting thing with ketamine is there's sort of an ability to do both. It can be a very external conversation that you're having with a therapist, and then there can be periods of going very internal as well. Obviously, the duration with ketamine is much shorter than other psychedelics are, but we see real importance of having that therapist there, and some of the conversations that do come out of that are really important. We do a staging in regards to dosing as well, so there's lower doses obviously to sort of start your protocol, which are much more a much greater ability to have conversation and things like
You
that.
kind of ease into it and you
Yeah,
take more with each session. And
ease
then,
into it, and also I would say build some familiarity with what the experience is like, and start to get some context as well.
okay, and how does the integration session work? So I've just lived through this crazy ketamine experience. Maybe I was hallucinating or whatever. Maybe I was confronting my fears, whatever it may be. And
Mhm.
now I'm back to normal. It's the next day or whatever. I'm talking to my therapist. What exactly are we trying to do in this integration session?
Yeah, so you're really just trying to take insights, things like that, that would have come up in those experiences, and while the brain is a little bit malleable, still be able to actually have some of those pieces land, some of those insights land, but also really there's an opportunity there to take a look at those insights and see how are what changes in your life do you potentially need to make, what are healthier things that you maybe need to be implementing into your life, and start to set people up for ongoing success, so that it's not you're not coming back for ketamine every 3 weeks.
Okay. Well, how often should a person come back, do you think? Like, let's say we do this, the therapy goes well. Does it become a yearly session, every other year, twice a year?
Yeah, it's really dependent on the person. Some people get what they need. There's a famous quote in psychedelic spaces, which is when it's time to hang up the phone, hang up the phone. And so some people get it, and don't need to do any more work. Some people prefer to do every 6 months or potentially once a year with ketamine. Ketamine does have a little bit of a wear off effect, just depending on obviously how your integration has gone as well. And there's obviously really exciting potentiality around what does mental wellness look like, and what does self exploration look like as these therapies continue to advance and get a little bit more mainstream.
Okay, so these are being done in Montreal at your Mindspace clinic, and I believe in
Mhm.
Vancouver at a place called The Drive. Is that correct?
Correct.
Perfect. And do you expect in the somewhat near future, let's say after the compassionate trials finish, that these clinics will expand to psilocybin, maybe even MDMA, or is that still like 5 years away, 10 years away?
All the locations that we've built so far are able to hold all the work that we intend on doing. That's why we built them the way that we did, was that they could hold MDMA and psilocybin work. And there's opportunities there. There's lots of groups, as we mentioned, looking to do clinical trial work, and our facilities being able to be locations for groups looking to do contract research work, which can be very hard to find locations in order to do that. So those locations continue to be generating revenue, doing a lot of other mental health practices, as well as ketamine, as well as carrying out our MDMA and psilocybin work, and then the potential to be able to work with other groups that need space as well.
Fantastic. Well, that's super exciting. Hopefully, within a few years, you'll be able to get your all in one stop shop for mental health in these clinics
That's
at
right.
Mindspace. I guess moving on. So the way I originally found out about Numinus, actually, the very first thing I read about you was how you guys are working on growing your own natural psilocybin
Mm.
as opposed to going the route, say, Compass Pathways is doing and creating a synthetic version. So I guess
Hmm.
my first question is why a natural fungi as opposed to one that's created in a lab?
Yeah, good question. A lot of people who come to psychedelic work obviously are people who have, probably tried synthetic medications, and there's a reason why they're coming to psychedelics. We believe strongly that if all things are equal in regards to psilocybin products, that the preferred route would probably be a natural versus a synthetic. I think there's a place for both. There's probably going to be people that maybe are more comfortable with a synthetic, but we believe that a natural psilocybin product um, is something that the market is going to be wanting. And from what we've seen, and we've recently filed some patents around this, more so around the actual production process, not the patenting of the actual molecule themselves, as we don't believe you can patent nature, but we do have patents around the process. And from what we've seen, there's potentially many other molecules that occur in naturally occurring psilocybin mushrooms that aid to the experience, the therapeutic benefit that psilocybin mushrooms have. And depending on what indication also that you're looking for, there's the opportunity to potentially tailor make natural psilocybin products for different indications, especially when you start to talk about anti-inflammatory indications as well. So that's some of the work that we're researching right now. We're doing a phase 1 with our extraction currently. And finally, the thing that we've seen with the naturally occurring psilocybin mushrooms is they should be a lot cheaper to produce than a synthetic. Synthetic production is expensive and dangerous as well. And with the natural extraction, it should be cheaper and much less hazardous.
Perfect. Well, for that clinical trial, is it just the pure psilocybin, so you're extracting it from the fungus, or is there the other chemicals that you were talking about, like maybe psilocybe or whatever? Is that involved in the clinical trial as well, or it's just solely psilocybin?
Yeah, so there will be other molecules involved in the first extraction. What we've seen is there's things that are in the extract, everything from serotonin and melatonin, which, are well-known molecules that people know of that have therapeutic benefit as well. So we'll be carrying out an extraction, a phase 1 with the extraction in it, and it will have some of the other molecules involved in them as well.
Very exciting. So I guess we've kind of talked about it a little bit already, but if you could you walk us out, like, say, a 5-year timeline of where Numinus is going from here?
Yeah, great question. MDMA, we're anticipating for MDMA to be legal by 2023. That's what MAPS has suggested as well. So 5 years out, we anticipate having, a global network of clinics really based off of regulation and the evidence, to be able to provide MDMA assisted psychotherapy, have a trained workforce that can do that. Psilocybin, I would assume, probably will be in a regulated environment by then, hopefully as well. So same sort of thing in regards to Numinus Health, to have an infrastructure there that is able to carry out MDMA, ketamine, and psilocybin therapy for people. And really also, the robust platform that needs to be wrapped around it. It's not as easy as just offering people experiences and sending them on their way. So that's what we see 5 years out. And then, on sort of the lab side, the potential to have a natural psilocybin product in market, to be able to treat a range of different psilocybin based indications as well. And also our lab, is doing a lot of contract work with other organizations in the space. We're licensed to be able to work with a host of different psychedelics, including MDMA, psilocybin, DMT, mescaline, LSD, ketamine, and we have a pipeline of things that we'll be rolling out through the lab as well. So continuing to have that pipeline, develop drugs, and be involved in a host of different projects in regards to the actual drugs themselves, and then a thriving service-based business as well.
So you mentioned in that response how one of the goals, and you also mentioned this earlier, was essentially scaling up the number of therapists that are trained to be able to do this. So you're doing this in your MDMA trials, you're doing this in your psilocybin trials. It seems to me that one of the biggest kind of bottlenecks or problems for the industry writ large is going to be this scaling up of talent, of people who are actually able to conduct these psychedelic therapies. Because even if, let's say, we make it through all the clinical trials and it turns out like it's fantastic, 90% success rate, it's still going to take probably decades to train up all these therapists worldwide to be able to do it. Am I off base there? Is there a way to kind of speed up that process?
Yeah, I think you're very, very right, and that's something that we've recognized from the beginning is the training of talent, and especially making sure that you're not wasting resources in regards to we could come out and say we plan on opening 100 clinics next year. If you don't have the people or regulation to do things in those clinics, you're tacking on a lot of burn rate and capex without being able to actually generate revenue. So the training of therapists, and that's really why the collaboration we have with MAPS, we're so excited about, is it really helps us continue to train the workforce. We've already ran a lot of therapists through the training program so that we have that workforce ready to go, and that will be really important going forward. And I think also, again, talking about integration is how do you scale that appropriately for people as well, knowing that therapist time, in regards to MDMA is a 4 to 6 hour therapy for people, and you can't expect someone who's doing MDMA treatments for people to also be able to do long-term integration for people. So it's really setting up that model where you can make sure that people are being held properly through integration and also, through the therapy as well.
Okay. So we're scaling it up as quickly as possible. Are there any other avenues, perhaps like teaming up with universities type thing to start training these people, or that's still too far away in the future?
No, I think, you've seen groups like CIIS, you're seeing a lot of universities now start to put together training. I think the big question mark right now is from a regulator and insurance provider standpoint, what is sort of the minimum criteria that's going to be needed in order to be a regulated psychedelic therapist, and how do you get insurance coverage or obviously in Canada, public health coverage. So those are some of the questions that we're currently really looking at, as well as how, our dedication has always been towards accessibility, and so how do we make sure that this is as accessible for as many people as possible.
Perfect. Well, I love what you're saying. I guess last question, then I can let you get back to all the important hard work that you got going on. So walk us down revenue road a little bit here. How and when do you think Numinus will start making some serious revenue, large enough to sustain the business, so we don't have to keep seeing the stock dilutions, which of course are reasonable at the stage that we're at and everything, and all the companies do them. But how long until we start seeing like real serious revenues?
Yeah, so we've been fortunate enough that we've got good revenue channels coming from all of our businesses. So our clinic network, Mindspace, which we acquired, has been operating for over 10 years. The Drive location's been open for 5 or 6 years as well, doing different mental health practices. So there's reoccurring revenue coming out of there. And then we've added on things like ketamine as well, which have sort of brought up the revenue also. And then on the lab side of things, we've been doing analytical testing. We have a number of different projects with different partners in regards to some of the psychedelic and in particular psilocybin work as well. So we see good reoccurring revenue coming off of the work with psychedelics currently out of there as well. And then, but where we see things really pick up, obviously, is when that regulated environment is there for MDMA and psilocybin. That's where we see things really pick up. But as I mentioned, there's revenue generating out of those facilities now. And then we see some very big blue sky potential with the extraction and with some of the other distribution work with some of the other different psychedelics as well out of the lab as well. So there's revenue, but also very large blue sky potential as well.
Perfect. You actually just reminded me of a question that I always have, but I never remember to ask these CEOs when I have you guys on. I'm wondering if you see Numinus more as a pharmaceuticals company that will be manufacturing the psilocybin, manufacturing the MDMA, what have you, and selling it to, say, clinics across the world for them to use? Or do you see yourselves more as the provider of the services, as the people that are going to be providing the therapy itself?
Yeah, I think what this industry and what's really exciting about this industry is very rarely would you have the opportunity to sort of do both to a degree. And I think that's what's really exciting about the psychedelic space is ultimately it is a service-based industry. It's psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. And so for us, we see opportunities on both sides, and we see parts that we can play on both sides. So you get to have the benefit of revenue generating, service-based business with the big, blue sky potential of drug production and distribution. For us, the one thing that we see is There's a lot of efforts right now around potentially driving or creating unique psychedelics or things like that. We think those are a little bit of a ways out. And usually when you're developing new medications, it's because the pre-existing medications aren't working. And so far from what we've seen, MDMA and psilocybin work very, very well just the way that they are. So that's been our focus, is more around, how do we create accessible drugs for people.
Fantastic. And I guess that's a great way to end it, the bringing it back to the mission at the beginning. So you've piqued my curiosity. I could keep going like all day if I wanted to, but in the interest of time, I guess we'll cut it off here unless you have anything else that you really want to get out to the viewers before we end the show today.
No, I think that's great. I really appreciate you having me on. And as you identified, I think, we're at a very, very exciting time for the company over the next couple of months. So we're really looking forward to the work that we get to do.
And I'm looking forward to covering it on this channel. Well, guys, that will be it for today. I'm James from the Psychedelic Investor. Thank you so much for Payton for being on our channel today. And we will talk to you all soon next time. Don't forget to let me know down in the comments section whether this interview changed your mind on anything, whether you own some Numi stock, whether you want to buy some Numi stock. I want to hear your opinions. And yeah, I will see you guys all soon. Bye, guys. This is James from Psychedelic Investor signing out.